The Mongol horde stretched endlessly across the golden plains, their warhorses restless under the setting sun. Tens of thousands of warriors, masters of mounted warfare, had conquered half the known world through their devastating cavalry charges and superior tactics. Their reputation preceded them like thunder before lightning, striking fear into the hearts of kingdoms far beyond their borders. Against this tide of conquest stood barely 300 souls, farmers and craftsmen pressed into service as soldiers. They had no cavalry, no legendary archers, only desperate courage and an unshakable belief in their cause. From their hilltop position, they gazed down at the approaching storm, knowing that retreat meant slavery or death for their families and everything they held dear. Bata Khan's lieutenant surveyed the small force with contemptuous amusement, his experience telling him this would be another easy victory. Mongol tactics were perfected over decades of warfare, their feigned retreats and encirclement maneuvers legendary. How could these peasant soldiers hope to stand against the most feared cavalry in history, when even mighty armies had crumbled before their charges? Sir Edmund had fought in a dozen campaigns against various enemies, but never had the odds seemed so impossible. He watched the Mongol formations with the calculating eye of a veteran tactician, searching for weaknesses in their seemingly perfect deployment. His men trusted him completely, though he wondered if his strategy would prove clever enough to save them all from annihilation. Edmund had chosen his ground carefully, studying every contour and feature for days. While the Mongols excelled in open plains where their horses could charge at full speed, this terrain offered natural obstacles that would neutralize their greatest advantage. Steep slopes, rocky outcroppings, and narrow passages would force them to attack on terms far less favorable than they preferred. The Mongol warriors made their final preparations with practiced efficiency, their confidence unshakable after countless victories. They checked their legendary composite bows, ensured their stirrups were secure, and spoke quietly about the easy spoils they would claim after breaking these final defenders. To them, this battle seemed like any other, destined to end with their enemies fleeing in terror. The defenders stood in silence, each man lost in his own thoughts as the final moments before battle passed slowly. Some whispered prayers to their gods, others thought of wives and children waiting at home, but all shared the same unspoken understanding that today they would either achieve glory or find death. Their grip on weapons tightened as the Mongol war cries began to rise across the plain. With a blast of horns that echoed across the valley, the Mongol advance began. Thousands of horses moved as one organism, their riders maintaining perfect formation as they covered the ground between armies. The thunder of hoofs grew to a deafening roar, while dust clouds rose like golden pillars into the evening sky, marking the approach of doom for the small defending force. Edmund raised his sword high, the signal that would determine whether his men lived or died. Every moment of planning, every careful consideration of terrain and tactics, led to this single instant. Behind him, 300 souls waited for his command, their faith in his leadership absolute even as the greatest cavalry force the world had ever seen bore down upon them like a tidal wave. Steel met steel with the crash of thunder as the first wave of Mongol cavalry struck the defender lines. Horses reared and screamed as spear points found their marks, while Mongol warriors loosed arrows that whistled through the air. The defenders held firm despite the overwhelming pressure, their discipline and positioning neutralizing the Mongols' superior numbers in this first crucial engagement. Mongol archers wheeled their horses and unleashed their deadly volleys, black clouds of arrows darkening the golden sky. Edmund's men raised their shields and pressed close to their fortifications, knowing that a single arrow could mean death for any who exposed themselves. The Mongols had used this tactic to devastating effect across continents, wearing down enemies before delivering the killing blow with their cavalry charges. The defenders replied in kind, their archers and crossbowmen stepping forward to loose their own deadly missiles. Though outnumbered, their superior position and careful preparation allowed them to match the Mongol archery for accuracy and effect. Crossbow bolts punched through leather armor with deadly precision, while longbows sent arrows singing toward the enemy formations with surprising accuracy for peasant soldiers. Recognizing that frontal assaults would prove costly, the Mongol commanders attempted to outflank the defender positions. Riders moved to probe the edges of the defensive line, seeking weak points they could exploit. Edmund had anticipated this maneuver and positioned reserves accordingly, his men shifting to meet each threat while maintaining their overall defensive integrity. Where the Mongol charges broke through the defender lines, individual warriors fought with the desperate fury of men who knew they faced death or victory in single combat. Mongol blades curved through the air with practiced efficiency, while defenders struck back with the strength of men fighting for their very existence. Each clash decided the fate of families, communities, and perhaps the entire kingdom itself. Edmund moved among his men like a lion among sheep, his voice carrying above the din of battle to rally those whose courage wavered. With each word of encouragement, each reminder of what they fought for, his soldiers found new strength to hold their ground. His presence alone was worth dozens of warriors, for where he stood, defeat seemed impossible. For the first time in living memory, Mongol warriors found their legendary tactics failing to achieve the swift victory they expected. Their feigned retreats were met with disciplined patience, their encirclement attempts frustrated by clever positioning, and their cavalry charges repulsed by well-timed spear work. Confusion began to spread through their ranks as they realized they faced an opponent who understood their methods and had prepared accordingly. Wave after wave of Mongol cavalry crashed against the defender lines like ocean waves against a rocky shore. Each assault brought fresh casualties to both sides, but the defenders' careful preparation and superior positioning allowed them to absorb the punishment while inflicting heavy losses on their attackers. Edmund's strategy was working, but he knew the Mongols would not give up easily, and his men could not hold out forever. In the center of their lines, Mongol commanders gathered in urgent consultation, their usual confidence replaced by concern as their attacks failed to achieve the breakthrough they needed. Experienced veterans though they were, they had never faced such determined resistance from such inferior numbers. Their whispered discussions revealed growing uncertainty about how to proceed against enemies who seemed to anticipate their every move. Seeing his opportunity as the Mongols paused to regroup, Edmund ordered his first counterattack. Disciplined groups of his best warriors broke from their defensive positions and struck at the enemy formations with precision timing. Their carefully planned maneuver caught the Mongols off guard, and for a brief moment the tide of battle shifted in favor of the defenders as they pressed their advantage with professional skill. As the sun began its final descent toward the horizon, the battlefield told a story of tremendous carnage on both sides. Hundreds of warriors lay still upon the golden ground, their weapons scattered and their dreams of glory ended forever. Yet despite these losses, the defenders still held their ground, their sacrifice buying precious time and proving that even the mighty Mongol horde could be stopped by clever tactics and unwavering courage. Recognizing that their current approach would not succeed, the Mongol commanders ordered a tactical withdrawal to reassess their situation. Unlike defeated armies that might break and run, these veteran warriors withdrew in disciplined formations, carrying their wounded and gathering their scattered forces. They had faced unexpected resistance, but their military professionalism remained intact as they planned their next move. Edmund watched the Mongol withdrawal with the calculating eye of a veteran tactician, knowing that temporary retreat did not mean permanent defeat. His men had proven they could hold their ground, but the Mongols would return with renewed fury and perhaps different tactics. He ordered his soldiers to tend their wounded and prepare for the next phase of battle, understanding that their greatest test still lay ahead. The Mongol commanders quickly reorganized their forces, bringing forward fresh cavalry units and adjusting their tactical approach based on what they had learned. Their legendary adaptability showed itself as they prepared new assault methods designed to overcome the defender advantages. Though frustrated by their initial failure, their professional discipline ensured they would not repeat the same mistakes twice. Edmund used the breathing space to strengthen his defensive positions, ordering his men to reinforce weak points and prepare for renewed Mongol fury. They worked with desperate urgency, knowing that their survival depended on every improvement they could make before the enemy returned to the attack. Though exhausted from the previous fighting, they labored on with the knowledge that their efforts might mean the difference between victory and annihilation. The Mongols returned to battle with renewed determination and modified tactics, attempting to use their cavalry in formations designed to overcome the defender advantages. They had learned from their previous failures and adapted their approach accordingly, showing the tactical flexibility that had made them so successful across so many battlefields. Edmund watched their new deployments with professional interest, knowing his own survival depended on countering these innovations. Edmund's men stood ready to meet the renewed Mongol assault with improved positions and strengthened resolve. Their brief respite had allowed them to reinforce weak points and redistribute their limited resources more effectively. Though still vastly outnumbered, they now faced their enemies with better preparations and the confidence that comes from having already survived one devastating attack. The second phase of battle proved even more brutal than the first, as both sides fought with the desperation of warriors who knew that victory or defeat would be decided in the coming hours. Mongol warriors pressed their attacks with renewed fury, determined to overcome the unexpected resistance they had encountered. Defenders met each assault with equal determination, their courage strengthened by their earlier success. The Mongols attempted their legendary feigned retreat, wheeling away from the defender lines as if in panicked flight. Edmund recognized the tactic immediately, knowing that pursuing the retreating cavalry would leave his disciplined formations vulnerable to the very maneuver that had destroyed so many armies before. He ordered his men to hold their positions, refusing to be drawn into the trap that had claimed so many other victims. Though every instinct urged his men to pursue the apparently fleeing Mongols, Edmund's disciplined veterans held their ground with iron self-control. They had seen this maneuver before, understood its deadly purpose, and refused to be drawn into the trap that had destroyed countless armies across the Mongol conquests. Their restraint in the face of apparent victory showed the tactical sophistication that had allowed them to survive so long against impossible odds. Recognizing that frontal assaults and feigned retreats had failed, the Mongols attempted to use their superior mobility to outmaneuver the defender positions entirely. Their cavalry moved with fluid grace around the battlefield, seeking gaps in the defensive line or vulnerable flanks they could exploit. Edmund's men responded by shifting their own positions, showing tactical awareness that surprised even their formidable opponents. Edmund adapted his defensive deployment to counter the Mongol attempts at outflanking, shifting his limited forces to meet each new threat while maintaining the integrity of his overall position. His tactical adjustments showed the same adaptability that the Mongols themselves displayed, proving that clever generalship could overcome numerical superiority. His men moved with practiced efficiency, their trust in his leadership absolute even as the battle reached its most critical phase. The Mongols brought forward their most skilled archers and positioned them on elevated ground where they could rain death upon the defender formations with improved accuracy and range. This tactical innovation showed their adaptability and willingness to use every advantage available to them. Edmund recognized the threat immediately and ordered his men to seek cover while maintaining their defensive positions. Edmund's careful preparation of the battlefield now proved its worth as his men used every available feature of the terrain to minimize exposure to Mongol archery. They crouched behind stone walls, utilized natural depressions in the ground, and made maximum use of their fortifications to reduce casualties while maintaining their defensive positions. Their tactical awareness and preparation were turning the Mongols' advantages into liabilities. Hours of brutal combat had taken their toll on warriors from both armies, leaving faces streaked with blood and sweat, weapons heavy with use, and bodies aching from the constant strain of battle. Yet despite their exhaustion, both sides continued to fight with undiminished determination, each warrior driven by duty, honor, and the knowledge that only one army would leave this field alive when the sun finally set. The Mongol commanders' faces showed growing frustration as tactic after tactic failed to achieve the breakthrough they desperately needed. Their legendary adaptability had served them well across continents, but these peasant soldiers seemed to anticipate every maneuver and counter every advantage. Professional pride warred with tactical necessity as they struggled to find a way to overcome this unexpected resistance. Edmund's men showed the effects of prolonged combat in their weary faces and trembling hands, yet their tactical discipline remained unbroken under the continued pressure of Mongol attacks. They had survived longer than any army had a right to expect against such overwhelming odds, and their remarkable endurance was beginning to tell even on these determined warriors. Yet still they held their ground, their courage unshaken despite their exhaustion. Recognizing that his men's courage was beginning to waver under the relentless Mongol pressure, Edmund moved among his warriors like a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. His words of encouragement, his reminders of what they fought for, and his own example of fearless leadership restored their flagging spirits and renewed their determination to hold their ground against impossible odds. The Mongols launched their most sophisticated assault yet, combining cavalry charges with supporting archery fire in a coordinated attack designed to overwhelm the defender positions through sheer tactical complexity. This demonstration of professional military coordination showed why they had conquered so much of the known world, as multiple elements of their army worked together with precision, timing, and deadly effectiveness. Edmund's careful preparation and his men's disciplined training now proved their worth as they responded to the complex Mongol assault with coordinated countermeasures that neutralized each threat in turn. They shifted positions to meet cavalry charges while seeking cover from archery fire, their movements showing the same tactical sophistication that had made their enemies so formidable. For the first time in the battle, the Mongols found themselves outmaneuvered by their opponents. The Golden Hour battlefield showed the terrible price of prolonged combat, with hundreds of warriors from both armies lying still upon the blood-stained ground. Yet despite these tremendous losses, both sides continued to fight with undiminished determination, each warrior understanding that only complete victory would allow them to leave this field alive. The setting sun seemed to mock their sacrifice even as it illuminated their continued struggle. The Mongol warriors who had begun the battle with such confidence now showed the effects of prolonged combat against determined opponents. Their formations, once perfectly disciplined, now displayed gaps where fallen warriors had created vulnerabilities. Casualties mounted with each failed assault, and their legendary tactical precision began to show signs of strain under the pressure of unexpected resistance from inferior numbers. Edmund's men showed remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming pressure, their determination strengthened by each successful defense of their positions. Though vastly outnumbered and suffering terrible casualties, they fought with increasing confidence as they realized that even the mighty Mongol horde could be stopped by clever tactics and unwavering courage. For the first time in the long battle, hope began to replace desperation in their hearts. Recognizing that the battle had reached its decisive phase, Edmund made his final tactical adjustments, positioning his remaining forces for the ultimate test of their endurance and skill. His tactical acumen had kept them alive so far against impossible odds, but the Mongols would not give up easily, and only perfect execution of his final plan could secure victory for his exhausted warriors. The Mongols launched their final assault with the fury of warriors who understood that failure meant not just defeat but disgrace that would follow them across the known world. Every veteran rider pressed his attack with desperate determination, knowing that only complete victory could salvage their reputation after such prolonged resistance from inferior numbers. This would be their last chance to prove their legendary superiority. Edmund's remaining warriors met the final Mongol assault with the same disciplined precision that had kept them alive throughout the long battle. Though reduced to barely half their original numbers, they fought with the confidence that comes from having already survived what should have been impossible odds. Their tactical awareness and preparation had turned the Mongols' advantages into liabilities, and now they faced their greatest test with renewed determination. The final phase of battle proved the most brutal of all, as exhausted warriors from both armies fought with the desperate intensity of men who knew that only complete victory would allow them to leave this field alive. Every clash of weapons, every exchange of blows, decided the fate of kingdoms and the course of history itself. Neither side would yield, and only the strongest would survive to see the dawn. The Mongol final assault began to lose momentum as casualty after casualty fell to defender weapons and tactics. Their legendary discipline started to crack under the pressure of unexpected resistance, and gaps began to appear in their formations as warriors fell or broke ranks under the strain. For the first time in living memory, Mongol cavalry charges failed to achieve their intended effect, and confusion began to spread through their ranks. Seeing their enemies begin to waver under the pressure of sustained combat, Edmund ordered his remaining warriors to press their advantage with renewed determination. The tactical initiative that had seemed impossible to achieve now fell into their hands as the Mongols showed signs of the same exhaustion and confusion that had plagued their opponents throughout the long battle. Victory, once unthinkable, now seemed within their grasp. In the center of their lines, Mongol commanders gathered in urgent consultation as their tactical situation continued to deteriorate. Professional soldiers though they were, they faced the unthinkable prospect of defeat at the hands of inferior numbers who had somehow neutralized their legendary advantages. Their whispered discussions revealed growing uncertainty about how to extract their forces from what was rapidly becoming a tactical disaster. Seeing his opportunity as Mongol formations began to show signs of disorganization, Edmund ordered his decisive counterattack. His remaining warriors pressed forward with the tactical precision that had kept them alive throughout the long battle, their disciplined formations breaking through weakened Mongol positions with devastating effect. The tide had turned completely, and now the mighty Mongol horde found themselves on the defensive against their former prey. Recognizing that further resistance would only increase their casualties without changing the outcome, the Mongol commanders ordered a tactical withdrawal. Professional soldiers to the end, they withdrew in disciplined formations rather than breaking into panicked flight, carrying their wounded and gathering their scattered forces with the tactical awareness that had made them so successful across so many battlefields. Defeat, though bitter, would not be complete. Edmund's warriors pursued the retreating Mongols with tactical awareness, pressing their advantage while maintaining the disciplined formations that had proven so effective throughout the battle. Their remarkable victory against impossible odds filled them with confidence and determination, and they pressed their pursuit with the knowledge that complete destruction of the enemy force might still be possible if they maintained their tactical superiority. As the sun finally set upon the battlefield, the tremendous cost of victory became clear as hundreds of warriors from both armies lay still upon the golden ground. Edmund's surviving warriors tended their wounded comrades while surveying the field of their remarkable triumph, understanding that their tactical brilliance and unwavering courage had achieved what seemed impossible only hours before. The mighty Mongol horde had been stopped, and their kingdom was safe. Edmund surveyed the battlefield with deep satisfaction and profound relief, knowing that his tactical genius and his men's unwavering courage had achieved what no other army had managed against the legendary Mongol horde. Though they had paid a terrible price in blood and suffering, their victory would be remembered across generations as proof that clever tactics and determined courage could overcome even the most overwhelming odds. The setting sun illuminated their triumph, and history would remember this day as the moment when the unstoppable became stoppable.